Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my special guest, Franco Burrows. Franco, thank you again for being here, my friend.
It's an absolute pleasure.
It is. Man, I always enjoy connecting with you. It's kind of ironic that I flew almost 5,000 miles and I get to Wales and you and I weren't able to actually connect due to COVID restrictions and all kinds of craziness going on.
Crazy, yeah. It was a shame, but I know we all had a great time, and I know what the guys are going through. So I was like day two. I know I've got an idea of what they're doing now. Yeah, I was there in spirit.
You're always there in spirit, man. It's fantastic. Guys, for those that don't know, Franco, first of all, go back and listen to the previous episodes with Franco on there. But Franco came through the activation method and then into the Brotherhood, which is our one-year mastermind group. And as his life progressed and changed, he's gone on to a bigger role within the movement of the Powerful Man. And you can find Franco, delving out advice, wisdom in the Facebook group, but also in the Powerful Man community that we have as well. So, Franco, thanks again for taking the time to share your knowledge here. What are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about boundaries in public.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, with your woman. Online, offline, I speak to a lot of guys who they're not happy with the way things are going. They're not happy. It could be her behavior. It could be the behavior of other men. But they're not comfortable, and they're struggling with putting boundaries in place. Sometimes they put a boundary in place, but they aren't enforcing it. And there's a number of reasons for that. And sometimes they just haven't put a boundary in place, So, yeah, I mean, what are your experiences with this? What are your thoughts on this before I sort of ramble into it?
Oh, well, you certainly don't ramble. I think you and I could talk for hours about this and any of these subjects. So I'm trying to figure out where we want to take it. But there's boundaries and there's also jealousy. So I think these are two things that can come together, right?
Yeah.
Going through there. And certainly when I was younger, maybe my late 20s or so, I would let jealousy creep in at times where it wasn't necessarily a boundary, or I was creating boundaries because I was jealous, not because I needed to have those boundaries and things of that nature.
That's a really, really good point. That's a really, really good point. Yeah. And what I would say is that if you're noticing that you're uncomfortable with her behavior or the behavior of other men, then that's a great question to ask. Is this just pure jealousy? Which, let's face it, we all experience as human beings. Women do as well, men do.
Yep.
Okay, so it's natural. Or is this something that's compromising the health of our relationship?
Yes.
Okay.
Great question to ask.
Yeah.
And it's a hard one to answer, though, at times, Frank.
It is at times. It is.
We're going on a tangent, but you want to really take a view of this, and almost a third person view is the easiest way to do this, guys. If you step out of the situation and look at it like you're watching a movie, now you can see what emotion might be playing here. Am I jealous because she happens to be laughing with a guy at a party, or a couple guys at a party? And is that her just having a good time and, they just happen to be men? Or is this a boundary that's being crossed, or, that I don't feel comfortable with going through?
So have you got any examples of what would be of each? What would be something that is just pure jealousy, and what is something that is a boundary or a boundary that either needs to be set because it hasn't, or has been crossed?
Well, there's one distinct one that comes to my mind in my life that I experienced. And so I'm at a wine bar in Santa Barbara where I had my businesses, and, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, was there with me, and drinks are flowing. And she went over and talked to these two, Santa Barbara, there's just beautiful people everywhere. It's like it's in the water, and she's over there talking to, it was 2 or 3 guys, one guy in particular, and they're laughing and having a great time. Right. And I just got furious. How could she do this in public? Here we are with everybody. She's flirting. All of these stories went through my head, and I walked over there and I kind of grabbed her, right? Like, hey, and I was kind of a jerk, right? And she would use another way to describe me, probably that's not as appropriate in doing so. Now, in retrospect, I was jealous. This guy was super fit. He was very successful businessman. You know, he had the qualities in him, and he was older than I was at the time, the qualities in him that I felt I was lacking or didn't have as well, things I was working towards, right? So that was pure jealousy. And I ended up looking like an asshole in the process. You know, I didn't do anything, you know, to advert, but there was nothing going on. They happened to be there. We all knew each other, right? I ran a couple businesses, very public facing. And so that was pure jealousy, where I thought she was crossing a boundary, right, by flirting with other guys. But the truth be told, she was just in there with me. I was joking with other women, and she just happened to go over there for a glass of wine, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one that she didn't cross a boundary. I was just purely jealous. Hate to admit it, guys, but that's the reality of that situation. A boundary could be crossed that I've seen a lot, right? Because I go to the gym a lot, is when a woman goes and directly is going out of her way to flirt with another guy in the gym, right? That guy, you know, it's happened to me where, you know, married women or women, you know, are there with their men, will go out of their way to come over and talk. And it's very clear that they're not going over there to talk about exercise or something else. They're going over there to flirt. And a lot of times they're going over there for attention, but I think they're going over there to get their man's attention and to show him, hey, if you don't step up your game, I might be able to get with this guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a murky area for so many guys. And one of the reasons is because there's no equality in this. And I mean that as in the reality. That's not a complaint. That's just calling out the reality. So, for example, even if you're a good-looking, attractive guy, you're not going to be approached by the opposite sex as much as a fairly average-looking woman.
Yep.
So women are going to get attention from men. They're going to get, for example, the average woman is going to get more inboxes from single guys, or maybe not single guys, but someone who's trying to get into her pants. Yeah.
Yep.
Or more people coming on to him in a bar. So I think that's important to recognize, you know. And yeah, I've had that as well in the past where it's just been pure jealousy on my part. But again, no equality in that, because when a woman is jealous and she's like going nuts, yeah, she doesn't lose any points for that.
Yep, that's true.
She doesn't lose any points. It's like, it's actually quite cool because she's reminded that we're attractive. Yeah.
Yes.
When the shoe's on the other foot, it's like, so a lot of guys are very, and I would have put myself in this category before, but we don't want to come across as the jealous guy, right? Yeah. Not that I've had loads of stuff happen to me, but I speak to a lot of guys now who are like, I don't want to be the jealous guy, but you know, she's almost doing porn star stuff with other men. It's like, you know, this is clearly, you know, it's knowing where the line is. Yeah, it's knowing where the line is, you know. So I think that's a big one for a lot of men. And even women can test men or use it use shame, basically, as a way of protecting themselves. It's like, oh, you're just jealous. It's like, you know, it's like,
yeah,
no. And that's where I go back to, is this for the health of the relation? Is this for the greater good or not? You know?
And that's a great litmus test, what you said there. So, like, for example, if your wife's sending bikini photos or worse to guys in Instagram or Facebook, that's not to the betterment of your marriage at all, right? She's, you know, to me, from my standards, that's disrespectful to the man in the marriage. And I think one of the key things here, Franco, and I'm discovering this for myself as I talk to you about this, is as men, we need to sit down and write down, what are our boundaries? What is okay? Because I think this is a lot like other aspects of a relationship or a marriage, is we have assumptions. I assume my wife wouldn't respond to her ex-boyfriend on Facebook and share photos of herself. I assume my wife wouldn't do, you know, is behaving in public by herself just as she would if I was next to her. I make these assumptions going through, but yet if these assumptions haven't been discussed, I don't know, because she might have
Yeah.
different assumptions. She might think, oh, well, sending a bikini photo, there's nothing wrong with that because XYZ, right? Or whatever her story is. So one thing I think first and foremost, guys, you want to get clear on what your boundaries are, and then sit down with your partner and communicate those. Have a discussion about that. Make it fun, right? You can, if you go back to the other episode where we're talking about initiation, you can make this fun, light banter. What I've done in the past, Franco, and I'm not, again, another thing I'm not proud of, is I would approach this very seriously. Like, look, we got to sit down. I want to talk about our boundaries. These are my boundaries. I want to know what yours are. You know, getting that very serious business voice, like I'm getting to the negotiation table or talking to my kids sternly. Whereas you can make this really fun, right? And when it's fun, you can get to the outcome you want, but you can also, this could be a way to initiate and get things started in the bedroom.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I would say, also don't let fear of being coming across as jealous or, you know, falling into that trap of actually really holding a firm line on things. I mean, one of the things I would say, I mean, I've definitely learned from past mistakes. I'll give you 2 examples for me. Okay. First one was, this was crazy. I was organizing a fairly big event. I put a lot of work into it. And my partner at the time was supposed to come. Okay. So I was like, you know, she was half an hour late, you know, an hour late, texting her. She was out with friends. Okay. She was out with a group of guy friends. I think at that point we'd split up. We got back together again. So I think we weren't that long back together again, but it was a big event for me. Anyway, she turned up hours and hours late. It was like way into the evening. And the first time I clapped eyes on her was when she was with all this group, her friends. So I knew most of these people. And some guy who was in the group, so I sort of knew him, didn't really know him. He went up and smacked her on the ass, right? So, and as he did it, she clocked me, and she was just horrified, right? Yeah. What's going through my mind now? I'm thinking I was already really pissed off with her for being late. I don't feel connected to her. Now, this is the reason why I'm telling this story is the lesson I've learned and why it's so important to do what you've said is you could get me killed.
Yeah.
If you don't behave, like I had a choice, right? I was like, right, if I go for this guy now, it could escalate really quick. I could kill him. That's the reality.
Yeah.
He could kill me, or I could end up in prison. Right?
Sure.
At the least, the night is going to be ruined. Right? All because there was a boundary issue. Now, the boundary issue is if I've got an event, you know, I expect you to be there, you know. But also, that's another reason not for her to hang around with guys that she knows might do, you know, I don't think for a second anything was going on there, right? But, you know, that was definitely a big learning curve for me. It was like, and also with their own behavior with other people, you know, like some women will kick off in a shop or have a go at someone in public. It's like, you could get me killed here because you're not going to get killed because people don't hit women.
Yeah.
Right. But I could get killed. So, you know, there's a lot of things that are hard for us to understand about women. That's something that's hard for women to understand about us. So it's finding a way to get that across. I'm sorry to get all serious, but I do feel quite strongly about that, you know.
Clearly.
And then the other interesting one was when, funnily enough, same girl. Now this time is totally different. We're in a party. Some guy now this time we're all connected, right? She's sitting on my lap. You know, we're having a good time. And we decided to leave the party early. As just before we left, she was telling me something happened. She had a disagreement with her friend. Her boyfriend got involved. Okay, said something that was a bit cheeky to her. As I'm walking out, I went up to the guy. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I said, "Look, I hope you're not upset at my missus." That's all I said, you know. But you could tell he didn't want to know, right? And this guy was my height, 6'2" or whatever, but bigger. And she saw that, and you know, I won't say what she said that night, but we were in bed, and she was aroused. You know? So setting the boundaries, like you say, in a fun way, can be an arousal point for her, but it also being really standing firm, you know. And again, it's for what's best for the relationship, you know.
Yeah, and Franco, I think what a lot of guys are experiencing nowadays, I mean, say nowadays, I'm sounding old, but their wife is posting on social media, right? And a lot of guys out there have a very beautiful wife, and especially if they're not having as much sex as they would like to. So the wife posts a picture of herself, right? She's got the belfie shot or whatever on Instagram or what have you. She's looking good. Maybe it's, you guys all know what the photo is, and life's amazing and all these quotes behind it. And then a guy comes into the comments, right? And the guy's like, wow, you're so sexy, you're so beautiful. And then the woman responds, and there's a dialogue, right, that goes on there. That is another form of public boundaries that we're talking about here. What can the guys do in this situation? Because I know a lot of guys encounter this where they're starting to notice that there's other men that they probably don't know who are tending to comment on their wife's pictures and posts more frequently.
Yeah, I think it's the same as the physical example I gave. You know, it's like, look, in the first example I gave, just don't hang around with those people. You can't be out on a night out with people like that. You know, you just can't. That would be my people who might do stuff like that. You know what I mean?
But Franco, I'm gonna pretend like I'm your wife. It'd be rude not to say something to them.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm just saying, I'm pretending that I'm the woman in this
on the Facebook thread.
Yeah.
What I mean is that it's in the same way. It'd be like, look, if you keep answering him, then you're encouraging that. You know, so don't put yourself in this. Don't put yourself in a situation where you could be vulnerable, and then I would have to come in and do something about it, and I'm going to be vulnerable. Yep. It's our job as a couple to protect each other, to protect the relationship. So if there's anything that could make us vulnerable, don't do it, you know? So I've actually noticed this, and it makes me laugh. So when a woman who's married or in a committed relationship messages me, sometimes they call me mate, you know, like you don't say mate in the US, do you? You say buddy, you know, buddy or whatever. But women over here say mate. And it's like, it's the most it's really strange to hear a woman calling you mate, because they don't, over here, women don't say mate, but it's started to come into our culture a bit. But it's one of the worst, it's one of the most subtle but clear ways you can say to a man, we're not having sex. You know, it's like, listen, mate, you know, listen, mate, look, mate, you know, and often they don't mean it. And, you know, like that, but it's a very clear way of saying I'm married. You know, this is a friendly conversation. There's nothing else going on here. When you see a woman acting in that way, you think that's what you want, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think you said something that really I think is critical. If guys are going to take one point out of this, in my opinion, is what you said is it's our job, hers and yours, to protect the relationship. So now you have a third entity here, which is the relationship. And so this is a great way, guys, for you to approach this conversation with your woman, right? So if you're having this, if you haven't had to have this conversation because your woman hasn't stepped outside of boundaries, still have it. But if she is, this is where you can come in and you're not taking the jealous frame, right? Because it's not about you. It's like, hey, look, if we're going to stay together, then we need to do what we need to do to protect this marriage, to protect this relationship. And now you're talking about something outside of yourself, right? You're talking about something outside of her. So there's no blame on her per se, but now you're saying it's almost like your child. I'll do whatever it takes to protect my child. And now you're framing this. That's why I loved what you said, Franco, is it's up to both of us to protect the relationship.
Yeah. Right? Us against the world.
Us against the world. I love that. And, you know, if your woman isn't willing to do so, then you might want to reconsider the relationship you're in and or relook at how your role in the relationship, which I know is a shitty thing to say, guys, but that's a big one.
No, I've been there. You know, I mean, we're talking about the messaging side of it. I actually, you know, one of the big issues I had in a previous relationship was being caught texting an ex-girlfriend. Now, this girl wasn't a serious thing, and I genuinely didn't even, you know, one of the reasons I broke it off with this girl, I didn't even find her sexually attractive.
Mhm.
But, you know, once that mistrust had been like, who's this girl? You know, she found that message, and then it was like, oh shit, you know. And I think for a lot of guys, and I was definitely in that spot at that particular time, it's like, how do I put in place a boundary when I'm the one who broke a certain boundary in the first place?
Exactly.
You know, so then it becomes a big clean slate process. You know, we've got the whole system for that, the clean slate. You know, and yeah, you've got to really clean up your own act. And what I would say is that shouldn't stop you. You know, when you look at the triad of connection, you've got the clean slate, you got the hidden motives, which is about the connection, and you got the leadership. So rather than looking at it as step 1, step 2, step 3, sometimes you got to throw it all into one big melting pot and say, look, clean the slate, you know, take responsibility. You know, I really validate her feelings on what's happened and connect with her on it. And also say, but I'm still taking a stand, you know, for what's right in the relationship. Because what happened in that particular relationship was I actually found, she never knew this, but I actually found messages where some guy was messaging her. Now, again, I don't think there was anything going on, just like there was nothing going on with me. But, you know, she didn't tell me about it.
Yeah.
So it became tit for tat. This guy was trying to come and meet up with her, and she was sort of like putting him off, but still sort of encouraging the conversation, you know?
Yep.
So that was a sign of the disconnect between us at the end of the day, the resentment that had been built up. So, you know, sometimes you can't put boundaries in. You can't just stand up and say, no, this is the boundary. Sometimes you got to stand up and say, you know, let's draw a line under the past. I'm taking responsibility. Say sorry without giving your balls away, as I know you did a great podcast on that. And then connect and lead at the same time. You know, it's kind of like one smooth, well, not always smooth, but one fluid process, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and it works really well. The triadic connection that you're talking about, we just had a guy within the inner circle, which is our more advanced 1-year program that we put on. You know, his wife basically was like, I'm leaving you. And he used the triadic connection when he came home to see her after the alpha reset. And it went from I'm leaving you to literally the next day, this is the best relationship I've ever been in. And so you can really change things, guys, that quickly, right? You can change things that quickly using some of these techniques that Franco's discussing and getting them in there. So, you know, in wrapping up, Franco, and I know you're on a time constraint, my friend, and for the guys, first thing, we'll go back and forth, but first thing, figure out what your boundaries are. What boundaries do you want? And I love, again, Franco's analogy of you both need to protect this relationship. So what is it you are protecting and what are you going to do so? And again, to your point, Franco, you know, don't be careful of saying like, oh, you can't have men in your DMs, yet you've got women coming into yours, or you're creeping into other women's, either way that might look. There needs to be some level of basically not synergy, but you can't have the hypocrisy of you doing, you know, do what I say, not what I do coming into the relationship.
100%.
Yeah. And then what's something else these guys can do to make sure these barriers are established?
Just be real. Don't pretend. Don't pretend you want, don't pretend you're okay with something when you're not. And
that's huge.
Don't let the fear of, I think it's a huge thing in society. You know, it's like men are being conditioned by the media, and also we won't go into all the different things going on. But I mean, there's a big thing about shaming men, and you can put off a man from all sorts just by bringing shame into the equation. You know, so do not allow it. Take ownership, and as long as you are fighting for the good of the relationship, like in your example earlier, your wife going over and talking with some other people and having a laugh and a joke, is that healthy or unhealthy for her and the relationship? No, you're out, you're being social and so on. If she's ignoring you the whole night, okay, but having fun with everyone else, then that's a sign that you need to address something else in the relationship, you know? But address it in the relationship. And
100%.
that's it.
100%. And guys, I think what happens for a lot of us men especially those of us that have grown up a little bit more, I guess, traditionally macho, to lack of better description, is we don't want to show that we're jealous, or we don't want to talk about it because I don't want to let anybody know because I don't want to show a sign of weakness that, that I'm jealous of something. And what Franco was saying, it's just the opposite. When you're actually really powerful and standing in your power, you do explain those things that bother you, right? Because you are secure with who you are as a man.
Yeah. And it goes the other way, because women will also, it can also be a big problem if you don't stand up. So that's, it's like knowing where the line is. And I know for me, if I'm in love with someone, I'll die for them. So, I'm definitely not afraid to do that side of the equation. But sometimes, again, women don't necessarily get that. They don't necessarily. So you have to, it's a bit like you have to show your teeth, you have to show your teeth. That doesn't mean you bite in anyone, but you show your teeth.
That's a good analogy as well.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes over here, Franco. Well, gentlemen, if you like what you're hearing here, Franco is actually, not only is Franco an alumni of the program, but he's also one of our advisors. So he's one of the guys that, if you have questions about the activation method, or how does the triadic connection work, and where does that fall into, and would this work for your marriage? Franco is one of the guys that gets on the phone call and just has a conversation with you, right? We weed out people just as much as anything else, just to make sure it's the right fit for the movement that we have. So if you want to talk to Franco, probably the best way of doing so is getting into our free community, the Facebook group. Franco is very active in there, and you can reach out to him. You don't have to be public. You can reach out to him privately and get your questions answered.
And it's a private group, by the way. A lot of guys are worried that people are going to see they're in there and what they're sharing. Nobody can see what's going on other than you.
Yeah, you can't even see the members of the group, guys. So if you jump in that group, no one's going to know you're a member. No one's going to know what you're talking about. I mean, these are great men having great conversations that matter. So you can definitely post in there, and I'm sure I've already given them permission to reach out to you, Franco. So I hope that's okay. I know how busy you are. But Franco's he's an alumni. He's a guy just like you. He's been through the program. He knows what it's all about. He's talking to men all over the world every single day, helping them out just like you. So just take advantage of that, right? You've got a guy right here that's extending his hand across the table saying, hey, let me know if I can help you. And that's one of the things I love about you so much, Franco, is you're always willing to help the guys and talk about being benevolent, benevolent alpha. You're a great example of that.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, I mean, I went through the program. So when you come off the activation method and the alpha reset, it's like, you just want to give back. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's true. It's so true. When you see guys struggling and it's so unnecessary, then that's, and I told you before, working with young footballers as I did, I could see it so clearly what a difference having a strong father makes, in their lives. And so this isn't just about your relationship with your woman, it's your family, it's your community, it's everything, so the impact is just, it's mind blowing.
It certainly is. So guys, get over to that Facebook community, introduce yourself. It's time to step out of the shadows and step into the life that you've always wanted, and reach out to Franco. Let him know that you've heard this episode and what you got out of it. Franco, thanks again. Gentlemen, that is a wrap for us here at the Powerful Man Show. As always, if you have an insight, guys, got to take action. Don't just go from one thing to another without taking action. Guys, we'll see you next time on the Powerful Man Show.